Today I want to show you how we grew this pumpkin patch with basically no weeds and grew almost twice as many pumpkins as we were able to grow in almost the exact same space just last year. Hello my friends and welcome back to Pantry Preparedness. So we got to have a little bit of fun over the weekend. I know a lot of people think about harvesting as work. For us, it's a lot of fun. We love to see how many pumpkins we get. We love to see all the pumpkins. It's just a blast. So today I want to show you a couple of things. First of all, we got to pick the pumpkins. This was a really good time with family. I was able to get my kids out there and put them to work. It's one of the reasons why we actually have this space to be able to grow plants as well as obviously, food and stuff. From a preparedness standpoint, it's fantastic to have the land to do that. But for me, it's not just about growing food, it's also about growing good kids. And so I like to put my kids to work. It's how I was raised, and honestly, I think it has a lot to do with the person that I grew into. So put the kids to work, and here we did just a ton of work getting not only all the pumpkins picked and separated out so that we could tell you exactly how many we grew and let you know who won our challenge, but also so that we could get this cleared out and ready for the fall. You can see our pumpkin harvest was quite a bit. The number of pumpkins here ended up being a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, it was basically double what we grew last year. And part of that was because we had a lot of these little tiny green pumpkins that are about the size of a baseball. They are starting to turn orange, and I think most of them will turn orange over the next couple of weeks. And whether they do or not though, they're a lot of fun and they look kind of cool. They look like little watermelons. We're calling them watermelon pumpkins because that's what they look like, is tiny watermelons. We had 120 of just those. And last year we ended up with like 130 something. I'd have to ask my wife exactly where we landed. So how many pumpkins did we actually end up with? I'll come back to that in just a minute. I want to talk to you about the weeds. This garden space, in fact, this whole property, weeds have just been a huge problem. My parents have lived there for several years, and just the weeds take over. We get goat heads all over the gravel, and we get these huge tall weeds. We get thistles. We get just these weeds that grow these little seeds all over them, and they get huge and they just blow the seeds everywhere. We even get horseradish because apparently years ago, somebody grew horseradish nearby. And then when the previous owner took over the property, they ended up just kind of tilling up the field, and what'd they do? They spread horseradish roots everywhere. And the only way to get rid of horseradish basically is to dig it up. If you know of a better way to get rid of horseradish, please let me know in the comments. You will be saving me so much time, because every year we find new little shoots of horseradish all over the place. Weeds are a constant battle. We're always trying to spray, we're always trying to keep them down, but unless you're on top of it early in the year and often in the year, it's just gonna be just a huge mess. This was to the extent that last year in our pumpkin patch, we would go over to weed, and my wife would do this sometimes during the day while I was at work, and she would spend hours, like every couple of weeks, over there just pulling weeds to try to get our pumpkins to grow better, right? So that they wouldn't be just fighting with these weeds like crazy. So this year, here's what I did. First of all, what I did is I drove a disc over this whole area and just kind of broke up the soil a little bit. Now, you wouldn't think that would have a big impact on weeds, but one thing I noticed was that in order to be able to do that area, I ended up driving it out just a little bit further past the edge of our pumpkin patch. And for the first half of the summer, the little arc right on the edge of this pumpkin patch had substantially fewer weeds, like in a perfect arc shape. For some reason, just kind of breaking up the soil just prevented a bunch of weeds. Now, some of you who have more experience than me with farming, you might know why. I've grown up mostly with just a smaller garden my little family could handle, that we didn't, farm full time. And so I don't really know exactly why that is. Like I say, I'm a chemical engineer by training and experience. I'm not a farmer by experience. So if somebody can explain to me why that works, let me know. But that was the first thing, is I disked over the whole thing, and that seemed to help a lot. The next thing we did is we decided to do landscape fabric. I know that can be a little bit of a controversial thing for some people in the gardening space, but for us, where we're constantly fighting weeds, we had to go with landscape fabric. Now, the exact approach we took with our landscape fabric, we actually got from a book. It's from Floret Farms Cut Flower Garden. Floret Flower Farms, they are another YouTube channel, so shout out to you. Thank you for showing us how you did this. I thought it was really, really awesome. So here's what we did. we got the landscape fabric. Now, we did talk to some friends of ours who are like literally landscapers, it's what they do, and just ask them, what landscape fabric do you get? Because so much of what we find, what we buy, ends up doing like nothing. It really, really sucks. And they said, you have to buy DeWitt. Both of them said the same thing, buy the DeWitt stuff and it's really good. So we bought these 6-foot wide rolls. We probably for this space could have bought the 12-footers, but 6-foot wide rolls of this DeWitt landscape fabric. And we rolled it out without anything else first. So we rolled it out in these straight rows and we just used some like landscape staples to hold it in place. And then this is really the genius thing that we got from Flower Farms. In the past, what I've done is I've cut slits like a little cross, and then you end up with 4 little flaps and you can plant your plants right in each spot. The problem with a slit is that slit can continue to tear. So what we did is I made a template. Now, their template was a little different than mine. What I did is I used a can of chicken, right? So I just, we buy canned chicken, like chunks, kind of like tuna fish. And I took one of those cans and I cut out the bottom. So the top and bottom were both open. I wore a really good thick glove, like a welding glove, and I set it down in place and I took my blowtorch and I torched it. And what it did is it melted the fabric in a nice, like almost perfect circle, and it was super fast. So the other thing I did is I actually laid out the drip line, how it was going to be, and then I marked using chalk, just regular sidewalk chalk, once every 3 holes in the drip line. That's how often I wanted to plant a pumpkin plant. I didn't want them really a whole lot closer than that. So I just marked a little X where each hole was, every 3 holes, and then I moved that out of the way, and then I just went along and set that little can right on the top, square centered over the cross that I drew. And then I took the blowtorch and I torched it and melted a nice circle, perfect circle, right in the fabric. And it went super fast. It took me a few minutes and I had this whole area done. Now here's the other cool thing. Now that it's the end of the season, I'm just gonna roll this stuff up, and that way I'm gonna be able to take care, like what I wanna do this year, because we haven't done it in so long, is I wanna add some compost to this space and really till it in. This ground hasn't been broken up. I mean, I disked it, but I mean, I spent like an hour and a half over this whole area just disking over and over and over again and barely broke the ground at all. I then had to till straight rows where the pumpkins were gonna be, and that took me forever. It took me like 3 or 4 passes with the tiller. So this time I am getting a tiller for the tractor and I'm tilling this area up like crazy, and I'm gonna till in some fresh compost, maybe even some peat moss to just help keep that soil broken up. Then next year we can roll it out, roll back out the drip lines, and we're good to go. So you might think, this whole process sounds kind of expensive and maybe really time consuming. It was a little pricey to buy that much landscape fabric, I'll agree to that. But it was a one-time purchase, and when it comes to the time it took to lay it out, the time we spent setting that up once took about as long as each one time we spent weeding. And like I said, we did that about every week or two all summer last year, just to keep the weeds from completely taking over. And as a result of having so much fewer weeds and getting to enjoy it a lot more, we also ended up, like I said, with about twice as many pumpkins. And now you can see all these pumpkins that we got laid out. We sorted them in piles, made them a little bit easier to count that way. In fact, we had to group them in 10s because we kept losing count. And in the end, how many pumpkins did we grow? The number was 357 pumpkins. So the winner of our pumpkin guessing challenge is at Big Ross. Big Ross, send me an email at info@pantrypreparedness.com, and I am gonna mail you your choice of pumpkin. We got some really, really cool ones. So yeah, send me that email. You're gonna get it as soon as we can possibly get it to you so you can enjoy it throughout the fall and harvest season. I know, kind of a silly prize, but I just wanted to spread a little bit of fall harvest cheer with all of you. So thanks for participating, and I hope that that little tip gives you just something to think about if you're battling weeds and having to deal with that. It just made our garden so much more enjoyable. I also hope to see you in our next video where we'll continue to talk about preparedness and all sorts of different skills and gear and things like that that are gonna help us be more prepared. And I'll see you then.